good day. Not much going on in the tropics here in late November, so I figured I'd go ahead and just update some of my compound leaf trees. Probably go ahead and do the Jacaranda, the flame tree, and the river tamarind that I have. But anyhow, I'm going to start with this guy. Both the Jacarandas were planted December 2018, so they're just short of being 6 years old. You can see the girth that is put on it in that amount of time. This one has always been in a pot. The next one I'm going to bring in has been in the ground for a little while, but we'll worry about talking about that one when I get it in here. Still trying to decide which way here makes the best viewing angle. This spring I came in and I did a chop here and a chop here. If you look through the playlist, you should see where I made those two chops. Left these two alone in the hopes that they would kind of catch up. I'm trying to, maybe balance the tree out a little bit. I don't want just that. I don't want just that to be the tree there. So I made those big chops, hoping these would grow out some. Basically they did. Then we had our first two tropical storms kind of come through and just barely grazed us here. But they were, this was quite a bit taller. I'd say it's well out of camera shot on how tall it was. And the first two that came through, they basically blew all the lower leaves and or leaflets off to where the only thing really still green on it was way on top, like a good 1.5 to 2 feet off of what you're looking at right now. And then we had Milton come through, and before it came through, I just figured I had watched the damage kind of happen from the other two, and a couple of them I even stayed home for, where I was able to look out the windows and kind of see these things getting whipped around. And I went ahead and I chopped it again, and sometimes it is kind of hard to tell exactly where that chop mark was. Oh, here we go. It was right here and here. And then also on this side, I chopped it there and there. And it's quite interesting because this one leafed out right away, probably like a week or two afterwards. And it had just all of these little leaves just coming out very, very small. Almost did a video on it then, but I started worrying that the big one might have died. And I'll get into that one in a little more detail, but then that one took forever to leaf out, but then it's growing a lot more than this one is. The only concern I have right now is that there's that slight chance that this may not do that great this winter. We got a night coming up here in about 10 days where it's supposed to get down to like 35. And I'm kind of worried about just all this new growth on it. I do think that I've allowed it to just build up enough health. When they were very young, I did a lot of chopping all throughout the year. I was very impatient. I didn't realize just how much you had to let the strength build up before you did all that much more with it. So I'm hoping that it has enough strength built up to go ahead and withstand some colder temps. It might even lose all of this, but then when our spring comes, which is basically like towards the end of January, mid-January or so, I'm hoping it does leaf back out. The weakness that it was showing after those first two storms was kind of like how they would look normally heading into the fall anyhow. And then just by me cutting it back, I think it just kind of spurred all this new growth out. I think for this time being right here, some people talk about how hard it is to get leaf reduction in these kind of trees, and this is just about as small a leaf as you're going to get with it. I mean, you can kind of tell here. I have been kind of watching some of this bark peel off here, and I decided to go ahead and just remove the rest of it. I think what happened was it got hardened up in there, and then it went through a growth spurt right when I put it in this pot. I think it's been in this pot around 2 years. Again, that's in the playlist that I have. And I think it just had that very much aged bark down there, and then it went through another growth spurt and just kind of separated itself from it, almost just growing some new growth and then shedding some of that old bark. And then actually, after one last look here, now how well you can see this either, got this little surface root. Go ahead and pop that out too. I think pulling that flakiness off the trunk there really did help it a little bit. Alright, and then we've got this one. This is the one that spent some time in the ground. Tell how much thicker the trunk is there. It really only spent maybe a little over a year in the ground. At that point in time, I really wasn't documenting things all that great. I just simply heard so many people saying that Jacaranda didn't make good bonsai trees. I don't think that they do either, but I have kept them this way. I dug this one up just so I saw how quickly it was getting big, and it was to the point of like either I was going to have to take it out of the ground or leave it there forever. It wasn't in the greatest part of my yard to have a big tree like that, so I wound up digging it up. I actually have a flame tree in the same spot that was in now, getting even bigger, even quicker than this one did. And I really got to think about digging that one up soon, if not for the purpose of even just moving it to a better part of the yard. Chop this one off here, here, and then these two spots before that storm. And then, I don't know if you guys can see, but like it's grown that much since from where I have my two fingers there. The other one, like I said, it leafed out a lot quicker, but it got those leaves on there and then just basically kind of hung out with those leaves. This one was taking forever, and I mean, I was looking at it daily for like a week or two when the other one just had full leaves on it. I was looking for like little sprouts on this guy here, and then when they finally came out, they actually did go much quicker. I mean, maybe the bigger tree, more energy built up, who knows. Now I did those chops on that other one in the spring, and then I would have to include that this one I actually left alone this spring in the hopes it would bloom. And it did not. They bloom on old wood, so I was hoping if I just left all the leaves that were kind of like there over the winter and just let it grow without chopping it, that eventually it'd force out a bloom of some sort. Just never did happen. Let's see if we can take a look at the other side of this guy. This spot here is one of the places where I chopped. The other three, there's actually, by the time I chopped it, it got down to where there's only like 4 branches. And the other 3 grew out kind of, towards the end, like they will. And then this one here did not. I got one little sprout down lower. And there's actually 2 there. One thing I didn't realize before I brought the tree in was that there are about 3 branches that are coming right out of the exact same spot. And as much as I'd like to let it just go as much as it can through the winter, I don't want those 2 branches coming out right at the same spot. I got it here. This branch has 2 coming right out at the same spot. This one seems to be growing a little bit stronger than this one, so I'm going to take out the weaker looking one. And again, just to show you, now these were 2 branches here, but there are some people when they plant their seed, they think that each one of these is a branch, and that is, you know, these are compound leaves. And then every one of those tiny little leaves on there is called a leaflet. But that's one leaf, one leaf, one leaf. This right here is, I mean, a branch is more or less a twig, but this would be a branch. And then the leaves coming off of it are not branches. Again, I've seen some people try to, when they're young, try to actually wire these. Wiring a leaf isn't going to do any good. It's going to lose that over the winter anyway. But maybe wiring the branch up some. I have had wire on that other one a little bit, not on this one. This one I'm just kind of going a little clip and grow. That's got a little... As long as this thing took the leaf out, these over here seem to be alright. Here's where where it didn't really come out at the end. I may go ahead and prune that off. One of those is kind of growing in towards the tree, and since there's 2 coming out of the same spot, I'm going to take that one off. And then this one has actually 2 going back into the tree. Like I said, if it was springtime, I'd probably take both of them off, but I'm just going to take the weaker one off. And a little one there. I do like the way they look, very delicate when they have the new growth on there. I have noticed that when you leave a stub like this on a ficus tree, it'll just kind of die back some, and eventually you can kind of cut back to it. I have noticed this jacaranda wood gets really hard. I'm going to try to at least get this part way back towards the growth. And that's even green live wood there, so maybe it'll even sprout out something new there. I have thought about using that for a front. I noticed at the one angle there, it almost looks like the branch or the trunk has zero taper at all. It actually does have some taper, just not quite at the angles that I have the pot in. This one here doesn't look like much either. And when I put it about like that, you kind of see it's got a little more girth at the trunk than you would think. Alright, and then we'll check into the flame trees here. I talked about a little bit about trying to get those jacarandas to bloom. I think I've got a little more hope with the flame trees. They are quite a bit younger. I think these are now just a little over 3 years old. This one I also chopped for Milton and didn't really quite have it pictured leaning this hard. You're going to see the other one I'm going to bring in a minute kind of has the same thing going on there. It had branch coming off of here that was quite a bit taller than this, and I knew that was going to lean that way, and I thought about cutting that off, but when I watched them in those first couple storms, this part up here was really the part waving around. This part actually seemed okay. And there was, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a close-up here in a minute, there was a branch just kind of squirting out of there. And so the hope is that maybe, you know, if I cut off the one kind of going this way, it would grow out there. And I'm gonna zoom in a minute and just show you, this thing has all kinds of back budding down here. And like I said, the unfortunate part of that would be the time of year and everything. I'd probably go ahead and plan on maybe chopping that off in the spring. Early in the spring, if I do see all of these buds start going, I definitely will. Alright, I kind of did this for two reasons. One, I do think this one has the most interesting looking kind of entrance to the soil here. And that was just where the seed kind of came out, plopped itself over, and then just kind of grew up like that. But I think over time that should make the tree a little bit more interesting. And then I did also just want to show you all these little green buds in here. It would be nice if they lasted over the winter, but I have my serious doubts. But again, sometimes you just got to live with what the tree gives you. Alright, and here is the other one that I still have in a pot. I'm going to go ahead and just talk about the one that's in the ground here real quick. I was able to find this really old video of where I first planted it. Or actually, here it is. It's about 1.5 years ago here. I think I planted it maybe 6 months before this, but there it was then. And then I'm just going to, show you what happened to it during the hurricane, like right after the hurricane. And then the one picture, about the second last picture here, should be maybe like 3 weeks ago or so. And then the one picture is from today. Nice bright blue skies for late November for us here. But anyhow, back to this guy here. This one I cut here also during the storm. In order to really understand what I'm talking about, you kind of almost have to see my yard. But this one I have kind of planted next to one of my sharpest cactus trees. And this is a cactus that's actually in the ground. And this branch over here had been kind of intertwined with those pads enough to where I noticed even during thunderstorms that side there was staying kind of steady because it was intertwined with all those pads. You can even see where it's done some damage to it, where it's just been kind of beat around them a little bit and everything. And then this one was just kind of waving around in the wind. And so, like I said, during Milton, I just had to chop that off. I don't really get a chance to go over there and look at things. It's going to be hard to get this whole thing in the picture as I spin it around, but I did just kind of want to get around at least once. Again, you can kind of see the distance here of how far it is leaning off. But anyhow, since I don't really get all that much of a chance to look over, I was wondering why the other one got all those back buds on it, this one got none. But now I actually see there are a couple in here right by that chop. Again, if I was brave, I'd go ahead and lop that right there right now. But I'm going to wait till spring, and if these continue to kind of bud on out or get some other kind of buds down there, I will shorten this considerably and let that kind of grow out. Should both build some taper and also kind of get some growth back in the direction of the trunk, or not really in the direction of the trunk, in the direction of the pot here, trying to get it to kind of balance itself out to where it's not just growing over that way. I mean, when I take this back out now, as much as I hate to, I'm probably going to go ahead and let those rest up against those pads again. Won't grow a lot over the winter, but I don't want it to teeter over that way. We do get some days with some really strong winds out there, so I want something to hold it steady. This one you can see, well, if you were here, you could see it's kind of shriveled up. It's kind of obviously dying back. I'm going to go ahead and just take it on back. Clean that stub up just a little bit more. And first sight of green, I'd say beyond January there, go ahead and just like chop that there. I would expect that to grow out and then expect that to go ahead and go that way. Maybe wind up with a couple extra branches on this one compared to the other one. We'll just have to see. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and update these river tamarinds too. I don't have any big plans for these anytime soon, so I won't be doing any videos on them. The seed ones that I had, the seeds, I got about 3 years ago. I planted them right away. And so the seeds are about 3 years old. This one I dug up off the side of the road. Basically in January, it would have been 3 years ago. I actually just did go back and watch that video just to kind of remind myself of what it looked like. And even since then, this bark really has aged up quite a bit. This bark down here did have a little bit of older look to it. I'm going to take off some of these sprouts down here. Keep that lower part of the trunk a little bit cleaner looking. But down here it was, you know, looking older and, you know, relatively thick. But then you could see here where the lawnmowers, like the city lawnmowers, were cutting that off. So that's where that chop came from. And then actually in that video, this piece here is just perfectly straight and just has that tropical look of when, you know, the tropics just kind of shoot out. I wouldn't even doubt if that shoot was just like a year old whenever I picked it up. And then since then, I've done a couple more chops. I mean, you know, there's one here and then here. And then I actually think I might have done this one this year. During the hurricane again, like I said, as bulletproof as this tree is, what I was worried about more with this one was that it would get blown over on the trees that I have it sitting around. I have it sitting around trees that I really wouldn't want this big thing just falling right on top of. So I did that just to keep it from toppling over there. Not the easiest trees, you know, from what I understand and what I've heard to work for bonsai purposes. It's working out better than I kind of expected with what I would, you know, what everybody kind of said about them. They say they get random dieback, and of course, you know, you do have the big compound leaves, everything else. But I really am, you know, pretty satisfied with myself with how I got it looking. I do think that one spot that I initially had it on is probably about the only front you could have. This one, maybe so. You can even see here I had the guy wire hooked up to here, and I think I'm gonna try to put it out just a little bit further there, try to hold that guy down just a little bit. Doesn't look all that natural now, but this thing actually does seem to grow all winter, so as it kind of grows, it'll just kind of grow up that way. There's one of those chops I did. That's the main chop that when I initially cut the tall part down. And then the rest of them here are just kind of on the way up. And this one was the one you can clearly see in the other video that was there. Alright, and this one is the smaller of the two. And right after I just kind of mentioned that I haven't had any experience with any dieback or anything, this one actually did get some. I was kind of disappointed when I noticed that this top branch fell off, just simply because I did have some movement going up that way and everything. But in a way, there's not much taper there. And that'll just kind of help keep the tree kind of short. So not that big of a deal. Considering the other one you're going to notice is a lot bigger than this one. I've let it get a couple of escape roots. I let it get one this year, kind of on accident. You can see here, just for being 3 years old, does have a nice looking trunk on it and everything. Think this has some sprouts coming out down here, and there's a backbud here. And just simply because I think this is just way too long for where the rest of the tree is, I think I'm just going to knock that off right there. Really wasn't planning on doing much today, but while I got it in here, what the hell. This one, again, 3 years old from seed. Got a lot thicker of a trunk on it than that other one did. I have noticed some things here. I made a couple chops for the storm, and that was before I had realized that I'd let it get such an escape route. When I had to fight it up out of the ground there, it's almost a little loose in the pot. It's not, it had, you can see down here where it had the roots coming through. So it's not going to come out of there by any means, but it's just because of how tall I keep letting it get, and because I do have this in not a flat wide pot, I've had to kind of have it resting on the ground, and then these things will just kind of shoot the roots out of the bottom of the pot there. I have actually now noticed, since I pulled it up out of there, because during when I cut it off for Milton, it wasn't until after I'd done those chops that I really realized I didn't have to, because it was rooted in the ground again. I have noticed that these branches down here have in fact died back. And then somehow or another, this thing sprouted out from there and is just about as tall as the rest of the tree. And at one point, I was thinking I'd just clean all that up. But now that I've actually even taken a closer look, I'm going to go ahead and just give this guy a good chop. I think I'm going to go ahead at the same height here and here and just see what happens. And nothing ventured, nothing gained. Kind of a gangly looking thing the way it is. And since I know it is bulletproof, I have no doubt of its survival and everything, so go ahead. So if I shoot for about the same height, that'd be just about there. And then this particular branch right here is... And now that it's not so tall, I should be able to just go ahead and put this someplace where it's not going to continue getting its escape route. And then basically I don't really mess with these trees too much, just because, I mean, I water them and they just grow like crazy, but what I have to do is remember to come back when it does get that initial growth spurt in the spring and try to give it some judicial pruning, just so that it doesn't quite get so awkward looking like it just was.